Now, look, whenever people think about moving to Texas, Houston and Dallas are usually the first two cities that they're gonna compare. And when we're actually talking about the differences between these two metros, there's going to be some stark differences, and then some of the things are going to be identical. Now, I haven't lived in Houston, but I've visited plenty of times, and I'm really hip to what's going on over there. You know, I lived in Dallas now for over 10 years, and let me tell you, if you really wanna know which would be a better fit for you, stick to the end of this video, because I'm gonna be giving you straight facts for the next 20 minutes. Now, when it comes to H-Town, Houston's pace is going to be just way faster than Dallas, right? Houston really reminds me of Atlanta, right? You know, I lived in Atlanta for a few years and things just move so damn fast. I mean, we were partying every single night, bottle service is the norm, like there's literally no days off in Atlanta, and H-Town has those same type of vibes. You know, there's all type of restaurants. I feel like restaurants in H-Town are more like a day lounge with food. You know, it's not just somewhere you go to sit, eat, and leave. Now, what I will say is there is a difference in what you're gonna get in different areas of Houston, right? You know, we're talking about down by the Galleria, Washington Ave, downtown, right? Things are gonna be a little bit different. You know, I'm gonna just go ahead and spoil it all for you. Most of it is fake. You know, it's a lot of people acting like they have it, but in reality, it's their homie that has it. And they're just rolling with them, you see what I'm saying? Guys, I see it all the time. Fake designer, women spending their last on hair, nails, makeup, and shoes, and their outfit is straight from Shein or Fashion Nova. You're gonna have the fake bodies, it's BBL Central down there, and it's just a lot of Fugazi.
Fugazi, it's fake.
Yeah, Fugazi, it's a wazi, it's a woozy, it's a fairy dust.
Now, there is no argument, Houston is fun as hell. You know, outside of all of that, if you're looking for a turn up, if you're looking for a never ending party, then H-Town has all that and more. Like I said, I've lived in Atlanta for some years and I did the whole party portion of my lifetime. You know, it was constant alcohol, constant friends coming in and out of town, loud music, popping aspirin and drinking Pedialyte to recover from the last night. You know, another thing I need to mention is Houston's nightlife also has that scammy type of vibe to it, right? Now, I don't necessarily deal with that in H-Town myself. You know, I had wisened up by that time in my life, but ATL is king of the scam artists and H-Town has that same type of vibe to it. You know, from people standing out at the parking lots, charging you for parking they aren't necessarily authorized to sell. You know, the drink orders being left on your tab when you leave your card on file. Look, you can F around and find out and get got in Houston real quick.
F around and find out.
Now, Dallas's nightlife, on the other hand, is really dedicated to the, weekends on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, right? Dallas is gonna be, more laid back until we have those planned events like Texas OU weekend, or if there's like a concert here in the city. You know, we have a few nightlife areas like Uptown, Deep Ellum, but if you compare clubs, nightlife, and day parties, Houston will beat Dallas all day long. You know, Houston really puts on a show and they really embrace that culture of being outside. Now, I will say Dallas is pretty keen on having a good cup of alcohol. I mean, drinking is really a big thing here in the city, so you have to be careful and keep your head on a swivel because Dallas drivers aren't the best. And if you add in 2 shots of Don Julio chilled with a salt rim, people tend to drive tipsy the later at night it gets. So if you're looking for that turn up before settling into suburban life in a few years, then Houston may be the route that you want to go to experience that. Now, if this is your first time to the channel, welcome. My name is Mark, and we help people buy, sell, and relocate right here to the DFW Metroplex. You know, we love all things real estate and Dallas, so if you're thinking about making a move, feel free, reach out. All of our contact info is down in the description and pinned to the top of the chat. Now, when it comes to the climate, Dallas and Houston are, 2 Texas cities that have, they're kind of comparable climates, right? Houston is notorious for its humidity though. It's gonna be that sticky, muggy air that really just clings to you, right? Especially during the summer months. I remember we took a trip down there in the summer with, the kiddos. We have some friends who live over there, and I think it's Manville, which is, one of those newer areas that's seeing a ton of growth and expansion. Now, when you're in Houston, right, it gives you a real excuse to let your hair down and just indulge in big back activities. So we were doing a thorough search through different reviews of some food places and decided to go and eat at the Breakfast Club in downtown, as it just came really highly recommended. 5-star reviews everywhere, right? Now, everyone is raving about their chicken and waffles, fried catfish. The place is definitely worth it, right? Now, what wasn't worth it was the wait. So when we arrived, we had to pay for parking, and then the line was down at least 2 blocks, right? And on a June morning at 11 a.m., the sun is already cooking, and we had to stand in line in the sun for about 30 minutes. And guys, it was crazy uncomfortable, right? My shirt was drenched, everyone was getting frustrated because the humidity is not something to play with down there. Like, this really made me rethink even eating here. Listen, the biggest difference in heat from Dallas to Houston is that god-awful humidity. And this is going to be thanks to Houston's proximity to the Gulf of Mexico, where, there's moisture in the air and it just creates that classic Houston heat. Now, on the other hand, Dallas gets a much drier heat, right? But don't get it twisted, it's still hot as hell.
Oh, Henry, what are we gonna do? I'm melting out of my dress.
But the lack of humidity makes it feel a bit more bearable for some, and it's definitely kinder to your hair and to your clothing. But I mean, the weather differences don't really just stop right there, right? Because it's so close to the Gulf, Houston is frequently in the crosshairs of hurricanes. With that low elevation and its location near the Gulf, hurricane season really brings that potential for severe storms and flooding year after year after year. We see it on the news up here in Dallas every hurricane season or with every heavy rainstorm, right? Houston is always flooding. Houston is always flooding. And every time I see it on the news, my mind just goes to, what if I lived there and how would I handle that? I think I'd deal with it maybe once or twice, but after that, I'd really be trying to find a new place to live. I have too much going on with the kids, inside of the business, right? To be dealing with my house or my car flooding every single year. I can figure out other problems that need fixing rather than having to deal with that. Now, while Dallas isn't on the hurricane map, but we do have our own storm challenges, right? Tornadoes are a risk up here in North Dallas, especially during the spring and the early summer. Now here's the thing, right? Tornadoes are more like a calculated fluke than a regular occurrence. Up here in Dallas, we know we have the potential for tornadoes and we need to be prepared for one, but most towns and suburbs have, tornado sirens. We get those Amber Alerts about the severe weather when it comes. The news will give you a heads up, some days before the storm comes. But in all honesty, tornadoes don't strike as often as hurricanes. I mean, if this were Oklahoma, I'd say it'd be a much more frequent type of situation up there. Most of Tornado Alley is located in Nebraska and Oklahoma, and they see some pretty bad ones up there, right? Now, North Texas, where Dallas is located, we've seen a few, but there've only been a handful with catastrophic results over the last 50 years or so. I mean, ultimately, whether it's Houston's tropical storms or Dallas's tornado warnings, both cities have the weather risks. So if you're deciding between the two, it often comes down to a matter of personal preference. Do you prefer hot and sticky or hot and dry? Now, Dallas and Houston are two of Texas's top powerhouses, no debate at all there, right? Each of them are going to offer their own distinct career opportunities. Dallas has really built a reputation as a hub for technology, finance, and transportation. The city is home to a growing tech scene with innovative startups and establishing giants shaping, the future of software, telecommunications, and digital services. Dallas's financial sector is just as strong as hosting major banks and investment firms that make Dallas a real player in the national economy as well. It's also a key transportation hub, thanks to the central location within the middle of the US, extensive highway networks and all the major airports as well. It's clear why Dallas attracts professionals from all over the country. Now, Houston, on the other hand, is synonymous with energy and healthcare, right? Houston is known as the energy capital of the world. They lead the charge in the oil and gas here in Texas, and they're hosting, global energy giants with also a big network of support industries as well. But it really doesn't stop right there, right? The city's a global leader in, the healthcare field as well, with you have Texas Medical Center standing as one of the largest medical complexes in the world, right? It's a real magnet for some of the top medical talent, making Houston a top place for innovation and life-saving treatments. So whether you're drawn to the dynamic tech and finance scene in Dallas or the energy and more healthcare opportunities out in Houston, both cities offer thriving economies with unique paths for growth. I mean, the choice is really ultimately going to depend on where your passions and your career goals align. Now, this next topic is going to be a big one and usually comes up in the conversation when someone is thinking about, either moving to Houston or moving to Dallas. So, just recently a client of ours, they were trying to figure out whether or not they wanted to live in Houston or they wanted to live in DFW, right? They had their checklist of things that they wanted, and both cities had pros in all the major areas that they were looking for. So at the end of the day, it really came down to price. Now, when you compare the two cities from a bird's eye view, Houston seems to be just a bit more affordable, right? The housing tends to be a little less expensive. And while Dallas is going to have similar options and price points, it just seems like Houston has more available homes at lower price points. But see, that is only on the surface, right? You see, once you dive into the numbers, insurance costs in Houston are much higher than Dallas, right? You see, insurance companies factor in the fact that Houston is much more prone to natural disasters and their premiums are much more expensive. And look, this isn't just for the housing portion of the market either. We're talking car insurance, life insurance, and renter's insurance. Outside of housing, I'd say both cities are pretty comparable, right? Gas is gonna be about the same. Your property tax rates will be about the same. So just keep that in mind when you're comparing the two and thinking about moving to either one. So one thing Texas gets right every single time is gonna be sports. Look, this can't be understated as sports is a part of the culture in Texas in general. Right? You know, football, basketball, and baseball are going to be our main drivers, and these three are gonna run from the small kids all the way up to the big leagues. You can see the impact sports have on the day-to-day with all the sports team logos plastered on all the businesses. You'll see it on cars. You'll see people wearing the gear all over town. You know, it's just hard not to see it. Now, Houston for the longest time was in the shadow of Dallas from a sports team's perspective. You know, the Rockets had a little run way back when James Harden was there. The Astros seemed to have up and down seasons every single year, and Texans were the laughing stock of the league for many, many years. But now coming into 2025, Houston pro teams are in the forefront. You know, the Astros are not that far removed from a championship. The Rockets are playing pretty well right now. And the Texans drafted CJ Stroud and just had their best season of all time, quite frankly. You know, Houston has a lot of excitement around its sports teams right now, and it really shows in the economy and the social scene, right? Like I've said before in other videos, man, a lot of events revolve around some sort of sporting event. And this is gonna be from the Pee Wee ranks all the way up to the pros. Now, on the flip side, Dallas has been a part of the national sports conversation just for years, right? You know, the Mavericks lost in the finals this year to arguably the best team in basketball. You know, the Rangers won the World Series not too long ago, and the Cowboys have been a great regular season team for the past 5 years. Unfortunately, they can't win a damn playoff game to save their life. Look, we also have the Dallas Stars who were in the running for, you know, the Stanley Cup, and we have a professional soccer team with FC Dallas. Look, guys, the moral of the story is, you know, both cities have a robust sports culture that is ingrained in the very being of each city. So in a comparison from a citywide economical perspective, I'd say both cities bring the same thing in regards to sports entertainment. Now, this is one of the issues everybody talks about, and it can be a bit subjective, but from my perspective, Houston is way worse than Dallas when it comes to the traffic department, right? Look, guys, Houston has one of the most congested highway systems in Texas. I read somewhere the other day that people in Houston, they spend about 48 hours a year in traffic, which is bananas. Look, Houston's suburbs are not very close to the city center, right? The areas where you're gonna be able to find an affordable home at great prices are gonna be out in the suburbs around Houston. And the city of Houston is actually bigger than the city of Dallas when we're talking about the actual city inside the loop, right? So when you're trying to commute around, you'll start to notice everyone is using the same highways, and that just causes a lot of backup. Not to mention there's a lot of accidents in Houston, and as soon as one happens, traffic jams are inevitable. Now, to be honest with you, Dallas isn't much better, but I will say it's not as bad as Houston, right? I feel like our traffic is really just in a few common areas. Now, the only way to escape some of it would be to use, you know, the toll roads or the HOV lanes. But for me, guys, traffic tends to move. It's just at a moderate pace until you hit one of these junction points where different highways converge and the construction around is gonna be at its heaviest. I feel like Houston is more of that, you know, stop and go type of traffic, where Dallas is more of a slower pace for a longer period of time. Look, the fact of the matter is you're gonna be dealing with traffic in either city. So I'd say this one is kind of a wash, with traffic in Houston being, you know, a little worse than up here in Dallas. Now, one thing that can't be denied or argued with is Houston's culture is just more apparent than Dallas. Like, this one is not even close, right? From a diversity standpoint, Houston has so many different ethnic groups, cuisines, you know, backgrounds, and it's really just a true melting pot, right? You're gonna have a lot of French influences, Creole galore, and that really shows in the food scene, right? It's plenty of flavor down here, guys. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Not to mention you get all the Tex-Mexican flavors that come from being so close to the Gulf as well, right? Houston just has that more urban type of vibe to it, more vibrant, more flashy, and more swagger. Now look, Dallas is no slouch, but it does have a more primmed and proper type of vibe to it, right?
One stack of high society, please.
Especially based upon which area you're living in. I feel like more people that live in Dallas are in more of the corporate America fields in comparison to Houston, which definitely has a more blue collar type of vibe to it. You know, Dallas diversity is good, but in comparison to Houston, it's definitely not to the same degree. You know, I remember my first time down in Houston, I saw a line of Cadillacs on swingers rolling down the highway, right? Now listen, I'm from the country. I'm used to seeing Crown Victorias or Oldsmobiles on big 22-inch rims, subwoofers beating the truck paint off the cars, but I had never seen anything like this, right? And the crazy thing is, it was just so common to everybody else around me. I mean, you're gonna hear it in the music, you're gonna hear it in the accents. It's really its own kind of vibe, and something I think is really just unique to H-Town. So another really big difference is going to be the type of homes you'll see in Houston, right? Now, inside of the loop in H-Town, you're gonna have some really old homes, right? You know, Dallas has older properties as well, but Houston, being so close to the Gulf, was one of those cities that was settled earlier, right? And they have the homes that date back to the early days. You're gonna see plantation style homes, very established neighborhoods, but there is a caveat, and I haven't really found this in any other US city. Houston doesn't really have traditional zoning. Like, you can have a single family right next to an apartment building, right next to an industrial warehouse. There aren't really just tight building restrictions on what you can build down in the city, so you don't see a bunch of uniformity in downtown. Now, conversely, in Dallas, it would be a complex problem just to add an ADU to your backyard. You know, I also want to say you'll see a lot more duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes in Houston than you will in Dallas. You know, Dallas doesn't really have a ton of multifamily, especially newer multifamily. The new construction duplexes you'll see here will be almost $1 million. So it's not an easy property just to go and house act for my investors out there. Now, going out to the suburbs, I'd say the two cities are pretty similar, right? You're gonna get the new construction homes with all the bells and whistles. You're gonna get the master plan communities with, you know, the pools, the playgrounds, and the putt parks, right? You're gonna get some modern townhomes inside these communities as well. I mean, both markets are scorching hot with so many people relocating to Texas, you know, for better opportunities, that lower cost of living we all want, and just a better lifestyle overall. Now, if you're looking for that suburban living, I'd say Dallas takes the cake with this one, right? You know, the Dallas suburbs are just further along and more established than the ones in Houston just overall. I mean, Frisco is home to over 200,000 people, and it's growing year over year over year. Like, Frisco is an area that is really becoming its own little metro with so many new corporations moving there. Look, I've always said I really like how easy it is to go from suburb to suburb around Dallas, right? There isn't a lot of dead space between some of the popular areas. You know, whereas in Houston, there's a bit of space between a lot of these popular areas around downtown, right? I'm gonna say Plano is gonna be another one that is really popular here in Dallas, and it's in the national news for expansion as well, right? Now, Plano doesn't have nearly the amount of new construction that Katy or the Woodlands around Houston does, but it's really just, you know, north of Dallas, and it still gives you that easy access to the city. I'd say both cities have a pretty good transportation network, especially when we're talking about catching a flight. You know, they both have two airports, with Houston having George Bush and William P. Hobby, and then Dallas has Dallas Love and DFW International, which I give the slight edge to Dallas on that one because DFW is one of the largest airports in the country. And when it comes to Dallas, finding the best area is going to be the hardest part, right? And quite frankly, we make the best videos about living in the DFW. Whether you want to see vlogs that be totally immersed in some of these areas, we created multiple playlists, and you can check those out right there.